Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Ali Jamal, and today we are diving into one of the most meaningful transition in life, retirement. But our guest today doesn't believe retirement is about slowing down. In fact, he says it is about starting something new. Joining me is Jeremy Keil, founder of Keil Financial Partners, better known online as Mr. Retirement, the voice behind the Retire Smarter podcast and YouTube channel, where he helps thousands of people plan not just their finances, but their purpose in retirement. Jeremy, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So, you have redefined the word retirement. Most people see it as the end of their career, but you frame it as a new chapter, a new beginning. What inspired that mindset?
Yeah, I've got a book called Retire Today. That's why you reach out to me, and it's all about taking control of your retirement. Taking control of your retirement might say, I have a plan ready to go, and I'm going to keep on working for 3 more years. Or taking control of your retirement might mean, that's it. I'm done working totally because I want to do something different. I've seen hundreds of people look at retirement kind of in bewilderment. Like, I just don't know what to do, and I'm afraid of making a mistake. And that's my goal, is to help people figure out how do I go from where I am to where I want to be, kind of in a ordered process, so I don't have to wondering if I'm doing something wrong. You've never retired before. You've never been taught to retire. That's what I aim to do, is to teach you how to retire.
Right. And do you think most people fear retirement more because they're worried about running out of money or losing their sense of identity and purpose?
It depends on who you talk to. So if you're in the financial podcasting space, they all talk about identity. And I think it's because it's a bunch of people that are higher income professionals, a lot of business owners, and their
Mhm.
identity is wrapped up in what they do. I seem to talk to a lot of people that are maybe just one step below that on the org chart in corporate. It's like your boss is the one that gets the stock options, and
Mhm.
you're not really wrapped up in who you are in your job title. You're more wrapped up in who you are of, I enjoy travel. I like to go hang out with the grandkids. And that's what I found, where those are the folks I'm talking to most often. And they're not worried about losing their sense of identity. They know who they are and what they want to be. And they realize, I'm not doing that at work. And so I want to quit my job, retire as soon as I can, and go out and do the things I want to do.
Right. And you talk a lot about being intentional, not just about what you are leaving behind, but what are you moving towards? Why is it so important to plan what you're retiring to, not just what you're retiring from?
Yeah, it's all about, what are you solving for? And I'm kind of a uh, math type of person, Excel spreadsheet type of person. If you don't know what you're solving for, what are you doing? And a lot of times people approach retirement like, I'm solving for having this big dollar amount of money. Well, that's not the goal. The goal is actually have income out of that money so you can do the things that you want to do. And so if you think
Mhm.
of it, what do I want to do? What's the income I need to do that? And then kind of work backwards. It's the tool is the money that you have, and the goal is, what is it you want to do? Do what you want to do when you want to do it. That's the goal of retirement.
So you need to do reverse engineering, basically, right?
That's exactly it. You got to reverse engineer into it to say, it's not solving for the money, it's solving for what you want to do, and the intermediate step is solving for, what's the spending, what's the income you need
Mhm.
to support the things you want to do.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stands out about your work is how you have turned the complexity of retirement into a practical step-by-step system. Can you walk us through your Retire Smarter framework, the main step you take clients through?
Yeah, I say you can tire in 5 simple steps. The tagline from my book is, create your retirement master plan in 5 simple steps. And a lot of people I talk to are engineering, finance, kind of money types. They've done really great at developing processes and following them in their career. And they say, why can't I do that for retirement? And they also say, I don't know where to start. And so that's my approach is saying, let's look at the process of retirement and take things in the right order. And the right order is number one, solve for your spending. You're going to spend some money in retirement, which is a factor of how much you're going to spend and how long are you going to be spending that money. And the how long part, I call that retirement longevity number. It's a combination of when do you start retirement and when does your retirement over. And most people get both of those numbers wrong. So I think that's actually the first step. I was writing the book. I've got 5 steps. And then at the end of writing the 5 steps, I said, well, actually, there's a step zero. I realized there's a step zero. And that is realizing, understanding, getting an accurate picture of what your retirement longevity number might be, how long might you be in retirement, and think through what happens if you live longer and what happens if you don't make it as far. You've got to get accurate numbers and consider what happens on both sides of that average, that median, technically on there. So that's step one is your spending. You're solving for your spending. Step two, I call make, because when you hit retirement, you're still making money. Just because you stop working doesn't mean you stop making money. And generally in the U.S., that is Social Security at the minimum. You might have pension, might have real estate income, might have annuity type of income, but virtually everyone in the U.S. has Social Security money. And often these decisions, whether it's Social Security for just about everyone or including pensions and things like that, you get one chance to make one decision. You fill out a form online and you can never change it for the rest of your life. And you ought to spend a little bit extra time on this big life-altering decisions. When I'm projecting out your Social Security, you'll often see, especially if you're married, the combination of how much Social Security will you get over your lifetime. It's $1 million. How much taxes you might pay. It's $1 million. Like, these are big decisions. You got to spend some time going into it and make this decision with accurate information and make it before you make the decision. Usually people just file for Social Security because their brother said it's a good idea at this time or not, and put some math into it. I say you should learn the math, do the math, and then follow the math with generally everything, but especially with things like Social Security. Step three, I mentioned taxes. I call it keep. That's trying to keep more of your hard-earned money. When you are working, you often don't get much tax flexibility. Like, you get your W-2, you give it to your tax person, that's about it. You hit retirement, you have so much more flexibility. You have flexibility in terms of the timing. You can choose to take money out this year or next year, right? December 20th or January 10th. You're only 21 days apart, but it's 2 separate tax years with 2 different tax situations. And you get to choose the type of withdrawal. So the timing, when you take the money out, and the type. Is it going to be your savings account, your regular brokerage account, your traditional account, your Roth account? That's 4 different accounts with 4 different tax situations. And you get the choice of which one you get to take out in retirement. Thinking that through ahead of time ought to lower your lifetime tax bill, which keeps more money in your pocket. Step 4 is all about the investing. It is deciding how much money do you want to take out of the stock market and how much money do you want to keep in the stock market? What's the level of risk that you're willing to put up with in the stock market? And all steps starts with looking at your cash flow that you've determined. Okay, step 1, I know how much money I need. Step 2, I know how much money is coming in from other sources. Step 3, I know what my tax bill is going to be. Well, there you go. There's leaving you in step 4. I know what my cash flow needs are that I need to bring out of my investment portfolio, and saying the amount of money that I think is short term, however long you think short term is, that money ought to be in short term income, interest rate type investments, and everything else that you need down in the future is still the long term growth market type of investments. And that's important. That now we're talking about this is the dollar amount you need, and what do you do with it? Well, that's step 4. It's not step 1. Usually people think that's step 1. And then there's the 5th step to the 5-step master plan process. And that's all about what is it you leave behind. Sometimes you leave behind a legacy. Sometimes you leave behind a mess. And I imagine you'd rather leave behind a legacy of you plan things out, and if things go wrong, you've got yourself in a good position. You've got your spouse and kids in a good position. You've got the charities you support in a good position because you've thought about it ahead of time of what is it you're going to do to leave behind a legacy.
Right. That's a rock solid, comprehensive retirement structure. There is a reason people call you Mr. Retirement. So, uh, I imagine when people go through that process, what you have just described, there usually one big moment where everything clicks. What is that typical moment clients experience when they go through this retirement, or we call it retire smarter process?
Yeah, so I talk about it in chapter one. It's called Retire When You Want to. I tell the story of Mike and Lisa, who I met nearly 20 years ago, where Mike was just basically fed up with work. They just had their first grandkid. They were wishing they could spend more time with their grandchildren, less time working, and they just kind of assumed, okay, I have to work until 65 because that's just what you do, right? 65 is retirement age, and 65 is when you get Medicare. And I said, let's just hold on a second. Let's just look at this with some curiosity. I'm curious, what are the rules inside your 401k? What are the rules with your retiree health insurance? Thankfully, this was 20 years ago. You see this a little bit less often now, but at the time, their employer had retiree health insurance, and they just assumed they never looked into it because they just assumed I can't retire until 65. Let's just look into it, kind of to learn the math part of it. So we were gathering all the information, found out that they had retiree health insurance, found out the cost, found out that their 401k was 90% in their employer stock, which is a high risk situation, but also gave them a high return as they got there. But there's also some tax benefits that they could do with that stock inside their 401k. So when we did the math, we said, let's learn the math of it. We did the math and said, you wanted to retire at 65. You wanted to have this certain level of income. You could do this now. You could retire today if you wanted to. And just the level of relief, like it's like their shoulders were up and they're like, they just, the level of relief was there where they said, that's it. We're going to retire. So they talked to their boss, Mike's boss, and said, I want to retire. Mike's boss said, well, you're kind of in the middle of this project. Do you mind finishing it out? And Mike said, sure. I mean, I enjoy this project. I know I've got a finish line of maybe 3 months from now, not 5 years from now. And they retired. They got to spend that time with their family. They've been retired for nearly 20 years now. And I just had a meeting with them yesterday. They are enjoying life.
That's a very interesting story. And we would like to build more stories like this. So, for listeners who might be 5, 10 years away from retirement, they know it's coming, but aren't sure where to start, what is the smartest first step they can take right now to begin preparing?
Yeah, so you're 5 to 10 years away. What's the smartest first step? That's a great question. You're already saving, and you're already saving to the point where you're watching your 401k statement mainly, hopefully go up more times than down, but you probably just don't know what does that turn into. I think you ought to go to a financial calculator online or find a financial advisor and say, okay, I'm going to pick some numbers out here. I'm going to say you're 55 years old and you're thinking you might retire at 60 to 65. I would ask that financial advisor, I would go to the calculator and say, how much income could I generate today in my retirement if I just retired today, if I retired 5 years from now and retired 10 years from now? And that's going to do a few things for you. One, you just might be surprised that, wait a second, the income I wanted, I can get that earlier than I expected. Or it might be the opposite. Like, wait a second, I thought this $800,000 of 401k would generate a lot more than apparently it will, right? If you don't do the math, you don't know what you're kind of capable of there. So you want to take a look at, and I look at what if you retire today? It's almost like in the old world of pensions, it's almost like here's your vested amount. Like you know what you've earned so far and what you've created for your retirement so far, and then you can see what is the incremental, the next 5 years of working or 10 years of working will it generate for you. And you can decide, should I be working the next 5 or 10 years, or do I have to maybe save more for the that time frame? So I would take the asset the investment dollar amount and find out what does it turn into for income.
Okay, makes sense. Jeremy, I know you've worked with hundreds of clients, and often the most powerful lessons come from real life stories. People love stories. Can you share one more story of a client?
They're all client stories, and I want to make sure I'm not sharing the client name. Here we go. This is Lori. Lori came in, met with me just a few years ago. She was facing a retirement age. A lot of times you're kind of triggered by a retirement age, like 59 and a half, 62, 55, 65, these kind of retirement associated ages. So she was approaching 62, and she had assumed I have to work all the way till I'm 66 and a half. That was her assumption. And she was also assuming that I just need to get more income. I clearly haven't saved enough. So when her company asked her to take a new position, a management job, she did not want to take it, but it paid her 20 grand more per year. She thought, well, I've just got to do it. So she came in just completely frustrated because she hates her job, felt like she had to do it because she needed that 20 grand to put in towards her retirement. But then we started digging into things. We started learning the math. We discovered that unfortunately, well, thankfully, she gets a pension. She works in the healthcare system. There's still some pensions in the healthcare system, like there is in the government. But she thought, and why she picked 66 and a half as her target, she picked that because she thought her pension kicked in at 66 and a half. Turned out to be 67. And so here I had to deliver maybe some bad news in a way. She was someone even more frustrated, like, I've got to work 6 more months just to have an income and a job I don't like. I said, well, I'd rather you know this, ahead of time. You imagine the surprise when you walk in thinking you could start your pension and you can't for 6 more months. But I said, I'm just curious if this even matters, because really 6 months of a start date when you've got a retirement that's likely 30 years or so, it probably isn't too much of a difference. And so when I did the math for her, I figured you don't have to work full bore till you're 66 and a half. You could work at the old job you loved till you're 65, make less income, but you've already saved, you've already done well enough where we can have you retire at 65 in the job you love instead of kind of slaving away until 66 and a half in a job you don't like. And it took her a while. It took her about a year to kind of believe me. But also, too, when we saw you're going to retire, you could retire earlier, she was deathly afraid of what happens if the stock market drops. Here I'm working my whole career, and then the stock market drops right before I want to retire. And so we planned it out, did the cash flow, and for her, it worked out to say, I want to move 1/3 of my money towards safety. And so just kind of shifted to safety, not because we were market timing or everyone should do this. It was just based on the cash flow of if she's going to retire sooner, here's how much she wanted to have towards safety. Well, she's a healthcare worker. This is the fall of 2019. March of 2020 hits. COVID goes haywire, and she just hates her job even more, comes in even more frustrated, and said, what can I do? I'm sure my 401k is horrible. She hadn't even looked at it for 6 months because she was just so concerned about the bad news. Well, it turned out because she had taken the foresight, she had moved 1/3 of her money out of the stock market, not because of market time, because that's fitting her cash flow needs. She had hardly lost much money at all. She was in a much better position. That right there, kind of thinking it's going to be bad news, realizing she had already taken a lot of the steps towards her planning, just again, took a weight off her shoulders. And she decided, that's it. I'm going to quit my management job. And so she finally quit her management job, went back to the job she loved. She turned 65 then, a few years later. And I said, well, you're going to retire? She said, no, I love my job, right? So retiring today is not about actually quitting today. It's about taking control of the day. She took control that day. She worked another year or so because it was a job that she loved, but she dialed it back. She went 3 days, 2 days, 1 day a week. And then she finally retired, and she insisted of taking me and my wife out to dinner. She said, I've got to celebrate. I'm taking you both out to dinner and I'm paying. It was great to hear. And then we asked, what are you going to do now that you're retired? She says, well, next week I'm starting motorcycle lessons. She'd always wanted to do that. Here she had that ability to have a dream retirement of starting her motorcycle. She was literally riding off into the sunset when she was taking her motorcycle lessons there.
That's again another amazing story, and that's why I believe that all the financial advisors, they're amazing people. They can bring in freedom, time, happiness to individual lives, provided if people start listening to them. So here comes another interesting question, and this is for couples. So I imagine it can get tricky. One partner wants to travel the world, while the other just wants a quiet life at home. How do you help couples who have very different vision of what retirement should look like?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with actually both expressing what you want. You might be surprised if you say, I want to take 3 cruises a year, and your spouse might say, well, I'd like to do one of those. You might have just assumed that your visions were different. So both of you expressing your visions is a big key step. And then understand that you don't have to do everything together. And so and I'm using that example. I've got clients where she doesn't care too much to travel. He does love to travel. And so he's traveling more with family. He's scheduling the cruises that he wants to do. But she'll come along maybe once out of every 4 or 5. So they've got some together time, and then he can go on his cruise, and she can be more doing the things that she wants to do, the gardening and reading, and she can do that without having him around the house, right? It's sometimes a nice break for both people to just go out and do things on your own, but express what it is you want to each other, and understand you don't have to do everything together. It's not a failure if you happen to both be taking separate trips. I just probably take every few often some trips together.
Sometimes this alignment is not there, you know.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so what are the biggest mistakes people make when preparing for retirement, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, the number one mistake that anyone preparing for retirement makes is thinking you can control what you cannot control. And you're usually focused on the inflation numbers and the stock market and politics. And these are all things you have zero control over. And I get it. You've got this big unknown of retirement ahead of you. You want to have this sense of control. And I think if you focus on the things you can control, uh, you'll get much better results, and you'll find out, wait a second, I have a lot more influence on these things. You should be more empowered. And those are the things that we've talked about a little bit before of you control how much you spend. You control your decisions around Social Security and pensions and annuity and real estate income, things like that. You can control what you do with your tax situation. You can control how much money you take out of the stock market and how much risk you keep in the stock market. You can control all these things. And yet the big mistake many people are making is they're focusing on the things they cannot control, the stock market, politics, the headlines. You can't control those things. There's a lot of things you can control. Focus on those things, you'll do much better.
Yes, that is very insightful. And here comes another interesting question. You have spent your career helping others retire smarter. I'm curious what your vision of retirement looks like. What does your dream retirement look like for you personally?
Yeah, for me, I just turned 45 years old. And for years, before I started writing this book, for years, I tell my wife, I'll never retire. I just love what I do. And
Uh,
then going through the stories, thinking through the retirement planning for everyone and kind of putting it into the framework more succinctly in the framework in the book, I realized, why am I telling my 55, 65, 75-year-old self what to do? Right? If I spend 40 years saying I'll never retire, it feels like a failure if all of a sudden I dis decide to retire. So I'm done with that. I'm no longer saying I'll never retire. I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to want to do. I don't know what my 55, 65, 75-year-old self is going to want to do. Although knowing enough about me and watching hundreds of people retire, I do have a high likelihood. I've got a strong feeling that when I retire, where I'm living is going to be entirely driven by the grandkids. Wherever the grandkids are, that's what I see all the time. People are retiring because of and for and to where the grandkids are. So I got a strong feeling that that'll be involved.
okay. So If you could go back and give your 30-year-old self one big piece of advice about money or life, what it would be. And
Yeah, if I could give my 30-year-old self some advice, thankfully by that time I'd been an advisor for 7 years, and I was taking the steps that you can do as a 70-year-old, as a 30-year-old, sorry, where you are just investing. The stories I gave you about Lori and Mike and Lisa, all right, they had that ability because they did the number one thing correct. They spent less money than they made, right? And I was spending less money than I made. I had followed somebody else's advice where I got married, and my best friend from high school, he said, "Okay, you're married. You and your wife both have an income. Stop living on one of those incomes. Only live on one income." And I followed that advice. It worked out quite well for us. So thankfully, I listened to some advice of others, and I lived on one income. We spent less than we made, and that really set us up. And I would do that all over again. And tell
all
me the
right.
second question. I need to remind her of that.
So when we hear the word wealth, what does it mean to you personally? How do you define wealth? Wealth is all about earning money or, happiness. How do you define it?
Yeah, I'll define wealth from what I hear all the time from my clients, which is you can do what you want, when you want, with who you want. I think that is wealth, and that's what if we're not all aiming for it, I think we should be.
Yeah, yeah. For me personally, it is more about freedom of time.
Yes,
I
yep,
should do what I really like to do.
I
Okay.
agree with that for sure.
Hmm. Here comes the final question. For those who want to learn more or connect with you directly, what is the best way for them to reach you out?
Yeah, best way to go, especially if you're interested in the book, is to head over to jeremykeil.com. That'll be for my book, Retire Today. So JeremyKeil.com. And there's a link there to buy the book, Retire Today, Create Your Retirement Master Plan in 5 Simple Steps. And after you buy the book, you can kind of log in. You put in your email, click submit, and all the resources I have are right there. Otherwise, if you're kind of a visual type of person, you can head over to 5stepretirementplan.com, and I have a series of 5 videos where I go through those steps that are in the book. So if you like reading books, head to jeremykeil.com, JeremyKeil.com. If you're more of a visual type person, head to 5stepretirementplan.com.
Right. Jeremy, this was incredible. I really enjoyed it. And I think a lot of people listening today will walk away realizing that retirement isn't an end, it is an evolution. Thank you for joining the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ali.
And to everyone listening, remember you can't retire smarter without living smarter first. See you in the next episode.